Welcome to episode 217. Today I'm interviewing author Alice J. Black. Stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by audiobooks.com. New customers get one free audiobook when using our promo code AudioShelf. You just need to enter the code AudioShelf on the sign-up page, then click Apply, then fill out the rest of your account info. Support this podcast by using our code AudioShelf and get your first audiobook free. Hey everyone, I am your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, I'm so glad you're back. Here on Book Chat, we get bookish with roundtable book discussions, book recommendation lists, interviews, and more. Be sure to check out shelfaddiction.com for even more content. Before we get started, let me tell you a bit about today's interview guest. Alice lives and works in the northeast of England with her partner and slightly ferocious cats. Alice has always enjoyed writing from a young age when she used to carry notebooks and write stories no matter where she went. Nothing much has changed, and she writes all manner of fiction with a tendency to lean toward the dark side. Most of her work is rooted in darkness, her inspiration coming from a macabre selection of reads as well as the dreams that frequent her sleep. All of Alice's social media links are below in the show notes, so if you'd like to connect, you know where to find her. If you'd like to comment on something you've heard during today's episode, you can find me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction, or call in and leave an internet voice message via SpeakPipe. The links for everything related to today's episode are below in the show notes. Hey Alice, thank you for joining me today. How have you been?
Hi, it's really great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm really great, thank you. A little bit tired. It's a bit late here, but it's all good.
Oh yes, I know, because you are on the other side of the pond, as they say. So it's evening for me, but it's night for you. So I appreciate you staying up a little bit later to talk to me.
Oh no, it's lovely to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so let's just jump into this because we have some fun stuff to talk about today. Today's topic is kind of ties into your series in an awesome way, because I feel like right now, especially more than ever, it seems like feminism is just a really strong theme amongst, everyone right now, with all the things we're hearing about in the news and on TV, and on shows, and, just all this crazy stuff going on. And I noticed that there's also an influx of very strong heroines, especially in my favorite genres of like fantasy and paranormal romance. And I'm absolutely loving that. So since your series is both fantasy and it carries a theme of feminism, I thought this would be a great topic for us to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's talk high level a little bit. Can you tell me how feminism plays a role in your series, Soul Seekers?
Well, for me, I think feminism has always been an important part of my life. I've kind of grown up with very strong women around me, women who are very inspiring, who stand up for exactly what they believe in. And I think that's always kind of transpired into my writing, as in I want women, the protagonists of my story, to be able to think for themselves, to act for themselves, and to not have to rely on anybody else. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to take away, because women are sometimes portrayed as kind of not lesser than men, but almost like they have to rely on men. And I want to show young women and other women that that is so not the case.
I agree with you. A lot of the time, women, especially in fantasy, they seem to always be weak. They always need someone to rescue them or, save them. Mm-hmm. Or a lot of the times the guys, even though the women are perfectly capable, the guys just feel like they just want to take over. And to find a protagonist that is able to stand up to that and still be dynamic and all those fun things, it not be written off as, a know-it-all or whatever, can be hard to do. How do you think that you were able to write about this so naturally, because it's a part of your history, your past, how you were raised, and still make the character well-rounded and not kind of come off to, how even though we shouldn't have to do this, we kind of have to still make them soft around the edges.
Yeah. I think with Peyton in the Soul Seekers series, she was a character that she just came to me. She was just there in my mind as I started writing the series. And I think for me, although she's very, very strong in some ways, she has so many vulnerabilities. And I suppose it's about not being ashamed that we aren't perfect, because nobody is perfect and everybody has flaws. And I think sometimes as women, we feel like we have to be superwoman and we have to do everything and anything. But it's okay to say, actually, I'm struggling, or I need a little bit of help with that. And I think for me, Peyton does ask for support in subtle ways sometimes, but she does.
Just because you're strong in some ways and you know what you know what you don't know, it's still okay to not know everything. It's still okay to ask for help. And that's part of, like, I guess your character is like, she has some issues, and it's okay to be a strong woman and have issues. So can you tell me a little bit more about Peyton and like kind of the conflicts that she has internally?
Well, Peyton, she's a very flawed young woman, and she's kind of suffered with what she finds out is called a gift, a psychic ability, later in life, which is something she was born with. But for her growing up as a young woman, it meant that she was hearing a lot of things she didn't want to hear. She was very confused. She didn't feel able to tell her parents or confide in a friend. So for her, it was about kind of being able to escape that. And I think the way she managed to do that was through alcohol. Now, Peyton kind of started drinking as a young woman, which is obviously quite an emotive subject. But it was, for her, it was about escaping that completely, which is the one thing that alcohol did for her. And although she knew that it wasn't an ideal situation and she didn't want to drink, it was the only thing that helped her at that time. So it was just a matter of doing what she could to survive.
Did she like go through some other steps to try to alleviate her, I guess, ghost seeing abilities? Is that what it is? She sees ghost or hears ghost? That's what she's trying to dampen?
Yeah, she senses spirits, and she has from a young age. I think when she was a lot younger, it was kind of, she thought they were her friends, her imaginary friends. That's how it kind of first came out. But as she was getting older and she realised that actually these people she was talking to weren't there, and her parents kind of picked up on stuff, that's when she became more conscious of it. She did try other things. She tried sort of illicit substances, kind of drugs and things, but they didn't work for her, and she didn't particularly like that. Whereas she found with alcohol, she could just blot it out entirely, kind of lose sense of herself, I suppose, and push that part of her mind away for a while.
I like that. I mean, I like the idea of that because it definitely makes her complex. It makes her more, dynamic. And so she's got some hurdles to overcome, and I guess she's got some abilities to learn. So can you tell me, like, high level about what the Soul Seekers is about? So we know she sees ghosts or hears ghosts, but what else is this series about as well?
So Soul Seekers as a series is about, obviously, Peyton as a young woman coming to terms with her gift. It's about acceptance of the self, about things that are perceived to be flaws, but kind of accepting everything as a part of your personality and as a part of your genetics and your makeup. And I think for Peyton, it's a lot about forgiveness and forgiveness of herself. She carries a lot of guilt around, not only for the drinking, but for kind of how she used to behave with her parents when they were still there. And it's about her kind of saying to herself, well, actually, yes, that's happened, but that's in the past, and now all I can do is atone for that and move forward. So a lot of it kind of, the story keeps coming back to Peyton's past, her parents, her alcoholism, and about what she wants to achieve. But I think she always knows that she's going to be brought back to the place where she grew up.
Well, I definitely think that accepting flaws is definitely something that everyone can relate to that reads the book, for sure, because we all have things that we think are unsatisfactory to, the public at large. So we all have to accept ourselves. So when you were coming up with like the ideas for Peyton to have like, I guess, confidence issues as far as her abilities and being weird and, unusual. How did you kind of zero in on the ghost factor?
As in, how did it develop for her, or how did I develop the idea? Is that what you mean?
Yes. How did you develop the idea? Well, let's go with ghost as her, flaw, as her issue. How did you come up with that?
If I'm honest, the whole thing started as a short story for, there was an anthology released a couple of years ago called 8 Deadly Kisses, and I was asked to write about a strong female heroine. And as I started writing, that was Peyton and that was her story. If you were to read it now, it's kind of probably set in the middle of the series altogether. It can be classed as part of the series, but it's entirely different, if that makes sense. It's a standalone story. But that's kind of her origin. And when I started writing it, it was actually initially all about the ghost hunting and how she felt about that and how she dealt with that. But she's in a much better place at that point than when the Leak of Madness begins, and she's kind of at rock bottom. But her ghost hunting abilities, her ability to see those spirits and sense them around her, has always been Peyton's biggest, flaw as she sees it, but also her biggest part of her personality.
So the Leak of Madness, as you just mentioned, this is the prequel, but also a more recent release. Let's talk about why you decided to write the prequel after the first book. How did that work?
The books were all actually written quite quickly altogether. So it started with what would be the Darkness Within, which is like the first book, which is where she's kind of come to the point about sort of addressing her alcohol issues and dealing with her gift and kind of accepting that. But I think for me, it didn't explain enough about how Peyton got to that point. It's probably not essential for there to be a prequel, but to me, seeing Peyton's story and how she came to be at that point is very important to understand her character and her personality and understand the change that she's gone through, the sort of metamorphosis across the series.
Yeah, so for her to, I guess, end up as this, ultimate quote-unquote badass heroine, she has to go through some trials, and that's what, I guess, do we get to see that in the prequel?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a lot of trials, I mean, she's probably quite a different person in some ways in the League of Madness. She's quite low, she's got no confidence, a lot of self-doubt, and of course, the alcohol that she feels like she needs to hide the voices, and that's a kind of constant factor throughout, whereas throughout the rest of the series you see her coming out of a shell and becoming who she is inside.
So is she like kind of like, I'm trying to envision her, is she like solving mysteries? Is she what's her role? I mean, is there a supporting cast of her? Like, how does she fit into the series? As a unique character.
Well, at the beginning of the series, she's just kind of, while she's learning to accept herself and her abilities, it's kind of, she's still toying with the thoughts of, does she want to do this? Does she want to accept a gift? And then when it kind of comes to the point where she's thinking, actually, yeah, this is a part of me and I can use this to help other people, that's when her confidence levels begin to soar, because she realises that actually, yes, she's different, but that's okay. And she can use that gift to help other people. But what I would say is that she never would have got to where she is at any point in the series without her best friend Olivia, who she just kind of lifts her up constantly. And while Olivia is quite hard in some ways, she does it with really good intention. She's got a golden heart. And I think that kind of shines right through.
Mm-hmm. I really do appreciate books where there is a strong friendship involved. Because, usually a lot of the books are all about the romance, all about the hero, all about, the guy that she tells her secrets to. But it's refreshing to hear that there's a best friend that's supporting her.
Oh, yeah. I think she's known Olivia since she was at school, and they've been together through sort of thick and thin. And now the Leak and Madness, while there's a lot of tension between the two of them because Olivia doesn't want Peyton to drink, there is also a lot of understanding, a lot of love and compassion and empathy. And without Olivia, Peyton probably wouldn't have ever considered stopping drinking alcohol because she would never have had that person to lean on. And Olivia has just been a rock in her hard place, really.
That's good. So when you were doing research for this book, did you do research? Did you look into alcoholism and, Ghost? And did you do some research to help you kind of make your way through this story?
I did quite a bit of research. I mean, a lot of the subjects in this are quite familiar to me anyway. I love supernatural programs and books myself, so I kind of immerse myself in those things. I've got a lot of knowledge about alcoholism through places that I've worked before. So to me, that was I had quite a bit of knowledge about that anyway, so it was just kind of transferring it into the fictional world of Peyton's life, really. So while I did some research, a lot of it's been kind of built up in my own interests and hobbies, I suppose.
Okay, well, tell us what's in store for Peyton and Friends as this story goes on. How long is the series?
The series, there's 11 novellas in total. So The Leak and Madness is the prequel, and then there's 10 more that follow. They're all currently written and currently being edited via Parliament House. Got a great editor, a great line editor as well. And they're just kind of going really well. We're working through them quite steadily, and they'll be coming every couple of months now. So the next release, obviously there's The Room of Archers in June, and then after that is The Beginning in July, and they should follow 2 monthly from that.
Wow, that's exciting. So for those that really get into this series and they just love it, they don't have to wait too long for the next installment.
Yeah, I think there's hopes. At the minute, they're just being released as ebooks, but I'm hoping that they may be released as volume paperbacks in the future, but more on that to come.
Awesome. Do you have any plans on turning these into audiobooks?
I don't know. I think it would be lovely. It would be great. It would be something I'd have to discuss with the publisher, but I certainly think it could really bring Peyton and Olivia to life. It would be great.
Yeah, you totally should. I love audiobooks. I really do. I support audiobooks.
Yeah.
And they're great. So if you ever do, get a chance to explore that, I hope you do, because, finding a great narrator can make all the difference.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So if there's anything else you think that we should know about Peyton and Olivia or the series overall, would you like to, share that with us now?
I don't think there's anything in particular I want to share. I just think, and I know I'm probably quite biased, but for me, Peyton is one of the most one of my most favourite characters that I've written. She's smart, intelligent. She is strong. She overcomes not only flaws but obstacles, and she does it all from the strength that she's got inside that she never thought she had. And for me, that's quite inspiring. Not only to be able to write somebody like that, but to kind of be able to share her with the world.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the newest release? The release in July, that's what we'll have a sample of on the blog post. What's that book? And tell us which book that is.
Yeah. So that's book number 3, and it's called The Beginning. And that's kind of the beginning of Soul Seekers itself as the business. So about Peyton kind of accepting her ability, moving forward with that, and deciding that actually she wants to spend her life helping people by using her gift.
Mm-hmm. Do people have to read the previous two to jump in here, or could they jump in here and not be lost?
No, I think people could actually quite jump in at any point in the series, because each of the stories is probably standalone. But to be able to follow the overarching sort of themes, it would obviously be easier if you started at the beginning. But each story itself is a standalone, and it would work to read by itself.
Okay, wonderful. So everyone, go ahead over to the coordinating blog post and read a excerpt from that book. And I know that Alice has an upcoming event for my listeners in the UK. Alice, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, on the 10th of July, at 6:30 p.m, I'm going to be at Colour Coats Library in the northeast. So I'll be there to explain a bit more about the series, and answer any questions that you might have. Might also have a few things to give away while I'm there.
Oh, fancy. So if you're in England, you're lucky over there. You get to get some giveaways. Sorry, guys, in the US, maybe next time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we sign off for the evening?
No, I would just like to thank you again for having me. It's been great, honestly, it has. And I think it's just lovely to know that people would like to know more about Peyton and Olivia.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Everyone, please be sure to check out Alice. All of her social media links are below in the show notes. You can also pick up a copy of her first book or her second or third book. They're all available now, and the links are all below in the show notes. You can just click, and go and pick up an ebook. So again, it's been a pleasure, Alice. Thank you so much for taking the time, especially at this late hour for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with us here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. And as always, happy reading. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that love pop culture, from books and audiobooks to TV and movies. I'll see you next time here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast.